Righto, you lot. Let's talk about why are nitro cars getting a bit slow, why not? I don't mean slow themselves, I mean why aren't people really buying nitro cars anymore? People tend to say Nitro RC is dying out, Nitro isn't, no one, it's not good anymore. But I don't think it's the problem of Nitro. I think it's two problems. All right, there's two problems. Now, the first problem, this is my opinion, the first problem is us, the people, human beings, the customers of these cars. We're lazy now. We don't really want something, like, for example, this HPI Rush Evo from the early 2000s. I bought this one myself when I was a kid, and I've had it ever since, and I think it's bloody brilliant, and I've said it many times. But the problem is the modern generation don't want something which is mechanical. You see, back when I was a kid and before I was a kid, people were more mechanically minded because life was mechanical. You had a real car. If you had a real car, it would have had a carburetor on it. And if it was a diesel, it would have had a mechanical diesel pump. It would have been quite basic. It would have had fuses, relays, things like that. Things you could mend yourself because they made cars to be mended. They made cars so that they made it relatively easy for the people, the consumer, the customer, to mend themselves, because that's what you did. You mended something yourself. You had to be fairly mechanically minded to just live life, and that's the way it was. That's why people mended stuff. Very little was thrown away, and people certainly didn't just, unless you were rich enough, people just didn't go out and buy a new one. Which is why things like this were quite popular. A little mechanical car with a little engine on it that you could play around with, and you can mend, take it apart, fix it when it breaks, because that's just what you did, and it was good fun. But these days, that's not the way of the world anymore. The way of the world nowadays, you buy something, if something breaks, you throw it away, you buy a new one. You buy something and you want it to work. If it doesn't work, you take it back to wherever you bought it from or to someone, and you pay them a load of money and they mend it for you. So the idea of buying something like this and having little things break, like the pull start snap, you have to fettle the carburetor a little bit to get the engine to run right. That's part of the hobby. The hobby is doing that. When people say to me, you hear people say all the time, they go, I've got a nitro car, but I'm always having to play around with it. I'm always having to adjust the carburetor. I'm always having to adjust this. It's no fun. Well, then you're in the wrong hobby, because the hobby is doing those adjustments. That is the hobby. That is nitro. That is also petrol as well. Although some would argue not so much. But I would say the hobby is actually doing those adjustments, It just is. Doing those adjustments, getting it to run properly, driving it around however you want to drive it, and then having something break and then mending it is the hobby. The hobby is mending. The hobby could be called the hobby of mending stuff. That is the hobby. So if you've got a nitro car and you don't like mending it, you don't like playing with it, you don't like adjusting it, you're in the wrong hobby. It's as simple as that. Now, the second problem, apart from us being idiots and being extremely lazy, with the modern day society, modern day generation being brought up just lazy, no mechanic, even real car mechanics now, just to touch on a little thing before I move on. Even real car mechanics is extremely lazy. If you take a car, an older car, 20 or more years old, to a garage, they won't have a clue. Right, I've got an old motorhome, 1991 Talbot, and I can only take that to one garage for its MOT because the bloke there that runs it is old school. He knows them because he used to work on them when he was younger. But the other people that are there, the young ones, they ain't got a clue. And any of the other MOT garages said, nah, we can't, I don't know how to work on it. Don't know how. Don't know how to give it an MOT because it's different. And if you take your car to a garage these days, all they'll do is plug it into a computer and have a look around it. That's it. Whereas it's difficult to explain, but everything's changed. Everything's got extremely lazy. Now the second problem, let me put this back. The second problem is this. The second problem is very much the manufacturers. So if anyone, I very much doubt they will, but if anyone from an RC manufacturer, Kyosho, HPI, any of those, low-C, if any of you are watching this, you need to go back to making good, fun cars. I had a look on Wheelspin Models' website earlier on today to see what they do now. I've noticed the Kyosho Mad Crusher is no longer for sale on there. It's not on there. They've got a Mad Van, but the Mad Van is electric. You know, so all you've got for Nitro now is just normal, ordinary, run-of-the-mill buggies. You've got a few monster trucks. Savages are still on there. HPI Savages, you know, the Savage X and all that kind of stuff. But there's no... They're just basic. They're just uniform. Do you know what I mean? The buggies are a buggy. Yeah, they might make little changes to make them better here and there. Little changes to make the steering better, the balance better, the engine, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest, these RTR engines, they're just an engine. When you're going into race engines, yeah, they have a lot of work because they want to get them to run, you know, Nova and OS and Reds. They're different. We're on about RTR. We're on about cars that you can just go and buy, ready to run. They just whack an engine in them, a 21, a 32, whatever. An 18, perhaps. But there's no... The designers don't seem to be going, let's have some fun, let's make something. So back in the early 2000s, they made, you know, Hot Bodies were making twin engine. They made a twin engine Lightning GTX 2. Kyosho made, what was it, the Giga Crusher, or whatever they called that, twin engine car. You got HPI making the Rush Evo, which is underneath this shell. I showed you it a minute ago. We'll have another look at it. A Rush Evo, yeah. It's a basic car, but it's great fun. And it just doesn't seem, when you look on the market now to see what's about when it comes to Nitro, it just seems like they're just making cars because they've got to keep their businesses running. I think the problem is made up of two problems, and these are the two problems that I've just told you. Because you can't blame the companies as such, because obviously they want to make products. Because it costs them, well, I wouldn't like to imagine, it probably costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to get a design team to think of and design a car. And then you've got some team, I don't know what they would be called, to make a prototype. So they make one by hand, probably, to see what it would look like, make little adjustments, blah, blah, blah. And then they've obviously got to make a working prototype that actually works. And then they've got to test it, because big companies like Kyosho, HPI, low-C, they wouldn't just design it in an office, make a prototype, look at it and go, oh yeah, love it, put it to production, and then make thousands of them. No, 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 they wouldn't. They wouldn't do that. They would make a prototype that actually works. Then they'd take it outside to probably a track or whatever they do, not a field, whatever they go to. And they'd test it. And no doubt they'd probably make 4, 5, 6, maybe 10. I don't know how many, but they'd make more than one prototype. Give it to, they'll have their own testers, but they probably give it to a couple of other people and just say, look, test it, rag it, just beat the hell out of it. We want to know the weak points. We want to know the good points. Just drive it like you've stolen it. And that's what they probably would do, I'd imagine. And then they bring them back in, have a look at them. Any points that are bad points, they probably rectify, blah, blah, blah. This is all costing thousands of pounds and taking a lot of time. And then only then can they say, this is our finished product. We've mended any points that are weak, any bad points. It's now acceptable and it can now go to production. But it's obviously selling them. Obviously, it costs a lot of money to make them because they've got to change all the tooling on their machines and lathes and plastic moulds and whatever it is they use to make RC cars. So this is all costing hundreds of thousands of pounds, wages and all sorts. So when they sell them, they've got to obviously make that money back and then start making profit. So if they're looking at the market and thinking, well, all the customers, they're all being rather lazy these days. They're all complaining about Nitro. The reason they're complaining about Nitro is because they don't have the patience. Not because of Nitro cars themselves. It's because the people don't have the patience or just the will or the want. They want it to work. They want to get it out of the box and they want to pull that pull start and they want it to work and they want to just drive it and they don't want any problems. Like I say, they're in the wrong hobby, but obviously they won't admit they're in the wrong hobby. And the companies, HPI, Kyosho, LOC, etc., 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 they're not going to turn around and say, well, you're an idiot, you know, don't buy our product if you don't like it. They're not going to say that. They want to make products that people are going to buy because they want to make money, because that's what business is all about. So it's easier for them just to say, oh, well, the customer's not happy with Nitro anymore. The modern generation just isn't mechanically minded, so we're just going to have to stop making as many Nitro ones. We're going to have to take away our development, our budget from developing Nitro cars, and we're going to have to move over to electric and make more electric, because electric cars are what sells. And that's why you see more electric. But then that only fuels the problem. So this is why it's a circle, and we're never going to get away from it, really. I think, to be honest, I think it's a bit of a problem. Because if they're only making electric cars, or more electric cars than they are Nitro, people are going to buy the electric cars, but then they're not going to be interested in the Nitro, because they're going to go, well, I can just buy an electric car, charge a battery up, plug it in, and I'll go. Yeah, it might crash, it might snap an axle or something, but I'll put a new axle on. Or I might do something and, yeah, put a new one on. And they go. And they go, well, I haven't got to play around with the carburetor. I haven't got to play around with the pull start when it snaps. I haven't got to change glow plugs. I haven't got to buy fuel. What can I say? What can I say? So, there's two problems, in my opinion. And they're both as bad as each other. And they're just causing a circle. How can we get out of the problem? How can we get out of this vicious circle? Well, really, it's going to be difficult, but we'd need to teach our younger generation that being mechanically minded and mending things and just not expecting things to just be easy and just to work. Although, to be fair, Nitro does just work if you do it properly. But again, that's my point. My point is, people aren't interested in doing things properly anymore. It's a tricky world. Don't get me wrong, I mean, electric is pretty cool. I mean, I've got this HPI Savage Flux, and I had the full-size Flux, the full-size Savage Flux, but I tied that a few years ago, probably 2016, 17, something like that. But I sold it more or less immediately after I bought it. I used it a few times. I felt massively guilty for spending that amount of money on myself, so I sold it and spent it on the kids. But my point is, electric is fun. I mean, I got this one because it's quiet, obviously, and I can just use this. I can go places, you know, where there's people around, people having picnics and that in the park, and me and the kids can still have fun together when there's people about. Whereas I'd feel massively guilty if I took a Nitro car to a park. There's people sitting around having picnics, and I start going, yow, yow, yow. I still feel guilty driving these around because, I don't know, just do. But that's just me being me. But I think the way that we can get out of the problem is if manufacturers, HPI, Kyosho, LoC, although they did well, LoC, with that motorbike, that, what was it called? I forget what it's called now, but that motorbike, that dirt bike they've recently bring out, the MX bike thing. I'd love to be able to get hold of one of them. I'd love to be able to afford one, but it's well out of my price range for a few years yet. But that seems like a really, I've watched a few videos on it, and that looks like a really cool thing. They've really gone outside the box to make that, and it looks like they've made a really good thing. So LoC are on the right path. Again, it's electric, but still, Nitro bikes are really cool as well. But you don't see any Nitro motorbikes anymore. Nitro motorbikes, they was when the companies were having fun making things. They made a Nitro bike. More than one Nitro bike. There's a few Nitro bikes out there. Nitro boats as well. You know, I don't see Nitro boats really anymore for sale. Brand new. I dare say there's probably a few. But I went on the boat section in Wheelspin Models and they're all electric. Again, it's because people don't want to play around anymore. They're lazy. They just want things to work. They don't care about having to do anything. They want to sit down. They want things to work. It's all about being lazy. And the modern society these days is extremely lazy. But I think the way we can get out of this problem is if the manufacturers started to have fun and started to make interesting and cool Nitro cars again. So perhaps even a twin-engine on-road car would be really cool. If there was a twin-engine on-road car, I would be well up for that. I'd probably save as much as I could to go and buy it, because that'd be awesome. You know, it's not all about making something that's practical. It's for me, the whole point of Nitro, and even just RC cars in general, is about making things that are slightly practical, but mostly ridiculous and just massively fun. The more ridiculous, the more fun. So that twin-engine Lightning GTX2 that I swapped for that Savage Octane, but that GTX2 was pretty ridiculous, but that's why it was so good. And when they made that back then, it's a shame that it didn't take off and they didn't make more of them. But the reason it didn't take off is because the people that bought them got frustrated with them because they didn't have the patience to learn how to get them to run properly. A lot of people struggle just doing one engine because they just haven't got the patience and they haven't got the mind. You got to have the mindset, and the mindset, once you've got the mindset, there's nothing to it. It just, the engines just run fine. But there we go. So I reckon that is my reckoning on the subject. The manufacturers start making good, exciting, fun cars again, not just the plain, boring ones. Yeah, just go outside the box, make a twin-engine on-road car, maybe even a buggy, which is twin-engined. I'd really like to see HPI bring out a modern version of a Rush, and I don't mean a bloody electric version either. A modern version of a Rush, which got the same sort of design, the stadium truck sort of design, but with a different engine in it, perhaps. It doesn't have to be a massive engine. It could be a 15, it could be an 18. Could possibly even stick a 21 in it, make it a bit more beefy, a bit of a beefier gearbox, or even a four-wheel drive Rush, which I do know that they bring out the MT and all that stuff, which was basically a four-wheel drive version of a Rush. But I think to revive a 20-something, 22, 21, 22-year-old Rush with a modern version of it would be a step in the right direction, because this is a brilliantly fun car, much more fun than any modern day buggy or anything that you can buy. So if HPI bring out a modern day version of a Rush and called it, I don't know, the Rush Evo V2 or something like that, so it's obvious that it is a modern day Rush, not some other random name, and it's mostly the same as the old Rush but with some upgrades, you know. I think that would be a good thing to do, and that would be a good step in the right direction. But I want to know in the comments, I want to know two things. I want to know where you are in the world. Where are you watching from in the world? Because I love to know where you are. And I also want to know what your opinion is on the subject. Are my thoughts the same as your thoughts? Have you got the same opinions, the same thoughts? I know a lot of you are just literally going to say, nah, not interested in Nitro because you're from the lazy world. You probably got one of those Alexa things in your house and you say, Alexa, turn on the living room lights. Alexa, turn on the kitchen lights, blah, blah, blah. Because you can't be bothered to get up and flick a light switch. The same sort of thing is why you just want to get a car, plug a battery in, and off you go. Because that's what you want to do, which is great. And I'm not saying electric cars should be gone. I'm just saying that's the reason why Nitro isn't being sold as much as it used to be. And you don't see as many about. Because people don't want that. But let's see. Let's see. If they made good fun Nitro cars, I reckon people would start to come back to them. I reckon. Because there is still mechanically minded people out there. So I want to know your thoughts. I want to know where you are in the world. And there we go. Maybe one day, if I ever become a millionaire, if you lot all subscribe to my channel and I get growing and I get hundreds of thousands and millions of people on here and I actually start to make any money, I'll make my own car. I'll actually somehow get some kind of company on board. Because I already have all the tooling and all the manufacturing stuff already there. And I'll design and make my own Nitro car. God, man, my brain is buzzing with ideas. I've got so many ideas. And I think to myself, how comes they haven't thought of this and done this? Because this would be awesome. But I'm not going to tell you what they are. Because if I tell you what they are, then you'll bloody do it. But I've got so many ideas for different monster trucks, buggies, stadium trucks, you know, that I'd love to make, and I reckon people would love them. Different ways of propulsion, different engine designs, and just, man, that would be the ultimate goal, to be able to do that. But anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave your thoughts on the topic, you know, the problem with Nitro RC. Is it the manufacturers? Is it the customers? Is it both together? I think it's both together. Treat people nice. Treat people how you'd like to be treated. And we should all have a nice, happy life. Remember that no one is the same. But we're all different. That's why the world is flavourful. We all should just get along and accept each other's differences. Cheerio, you lot. All the best.